Hello, we are live. Welcome to Shooting the Shit. It's Monday again. It seems to come round so quickly, doesn't it? And today we are talking about toxic femininity because we cover all the fun subjects on this podcast, all the exciting things to brighten your day. So, before we dive into some toxic femininity facts and figures, Hannah, what's your name and where'd you come from?
I'm Hannah and I am from Grow Traffic.
And Joe, what's your name and where'd you come from?
My name is Joe and I work in publishing.
Yes, you do. And Rish might join us, but she might not. And I'm Rachel, and I work in SEO. Girls in SEO, eh? That's a turn up for the books, isn't it? Exactly. Today we are talking toxic femininity. Now, there's quite a lot of disagreement about what toxic femininity is. If you look online and Google it, you actually, even in the Google answers, so what Google deems to be the correct answers, you get several different definitions of what toxic femininity is. And I suppose really you can tell it depends whether you're coming at it from a masculine side or a feminine side. Now, obviously we know what toxic masculinity is. That's when men are as much victims of the patriarchy as women are, and so a lot of men will say, well, toxic femininity essentially is feminism, and there's quite a lot of articles online about how toxic femininity and toxic feminism are the same thing, but they're not. That's not what we're talking about. What we are talking about when we talk about toxic femininity is when essentially women don't support each other. So if you've ever been in a situation where you're trying your best and another woman has put you down or diminished you or spoken over you, done all of the things that men are normally doing, because they deem you as a threat or they are jealous of you, that is toxic femininity. And so naturally that tends to occur most in the workplace, I think, in most people's examples. Hannah.
It's interesting that toxic masculinity is like the negative impact of the expectations placed on men, or to be masculine, whereas toxic femininity is girls against girls, like girls are mean to each other. And I wonder like where this definition has come from and where this difference has come from, that the masculinity is, poor men, these expectations are crippling them, and rightly so. But with women, it's girls are mean to each other.
But I do think perhaps it's come essentially from the same place, because when we talk about toxic masculinity, it's that men are victims of the patriarchy. So we expect them to be strong and we expect them to be, to never cry and to not show emotion and to go and be the breadwinner of the family, all of those things. And toxic femininity, in a way, kind of comes from the same thing. It comes from the same place. It's the fact that, for the past 30, 40 years since second wave feminism, there have only been a few women that have broken that glass ceiling. And if you are the token woman in the boardroom and all of a sudden a young bright thing comes along threatening your position, you perhaps are going to, there's been this idea that, only a small percentage of women will be in the workplace and therefore another woman threatens you, when actually what we're trying to say with modern feminism is that there is no limit on success. There's no number quota. We can have an entire women full of boardroom. So don't pull the ladder up behind you and encourage those next ones along. What's so funny
then? We could have had a whole women full of boardroom. That sounds uncomfortable. No, it's true though. And I think there's also this, and I'm sure we'll get into this, I feel like stay-at-home mothers and working mothers and working women and people who don't have children and people who don't want children, and we're all pitted against each other.
Absolutely.
And often it's us doing the pitting, and it's us kind of tearing each other down for our decisions and saying this makes you less of a woman, or less of a mother, or like that midwife that asked me if I work or if I'm a mother, and like both. Yeah.
And it's exactly that, because I think, even if we take it out of the workplace and bring it home, when I think about, Dali said to me once, he was like, I was like, I've got to clean my house or people will judge me. And he was like, who is going to judge you? And I was like, well, my mother, for one thing. And then I thought about all the people that I would be frightened of judging me for having a dirty house. And it was women. It was other women. Like, because I just think men are not going to give a shit, are they, if you haven't Ubered for 4 days? Whereas a woman will come round and go, Oh God, she's got a filthy home. Oh God, look, she hasn't cleaned her curtains, or her house stinks of dog.
Like, I suppose, and
Well,
like,
this is what I mean. I don't know. We have this impression of like you said, we're pitted against each other. Is it all manufactured? Is it in our heads?
like
Joe,
Dahlia
have you ever felt this? Oh, so go on, Hannah. Go on.
All right, go on, Joe. Let her go. We're in edgeways. It'd be nice.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, it was really interesting when you posed this question to me, a little chat on the group, and I was like, yeah, well, I feel like I just spent my life being put down by other women. But I never thought of it as a women thing. I just thought about it as a mean girl, just mean people, mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. And I think, well, obviously I'm much older and wiser now, and it just horrifies me how much girls or women are just willing to tear someone else down, and often for traits around being a woman to start with. You know, I mean, the big thing for me is growing up was, you know, you're too clever, you're too tall, you're too skinny, your boobs aren't big enough, like all of these, you know. And as a girl, they're all dreadful things, you know. And it was girls who were throwing that mainly at me.
Like, I had your boobs are so big, so you must be a slut, like, or like the too tall thing as well, or you're too sporty, or, you know, so you're too sporty,
too
so you
butch.
Too butch, yeah. Or you must be a lesbian because you're sporty and you're tall and you enjoy this, and like and it was mainly girls, but it was also boys.
Yeah, I did get it from boys too, but yeah, it was just seemed to be but it was very gendered.
Yes. It is gender, and this is it, and that whole guilt. I mean, around. I mean, you mentioned, Hannah, you know, workplace and motherhood and things. You know, if you stay at home with your baby, oh, you're just a stay-at-home mother. If you go out to work, you know, you have all that guilt about leaving your baby. All of the connotations about houses and housework, and, you know, cooking. Do you cook for your family? Even all of that kind of stuff. You know, and it absolutely is. It's that criticism that comes from within. Yeah, Hannah.
Yeah, I must say, I've never felt guilty for working, and I've always worked full time with both the girls, and went back to work pretty early after having both of them. And I've never felt guilty for it, and I've never been made to feel guilty for it. Nobody has ever said to me like, "Oh, those poor children," or whatever, you know, because I've worked. I just see it as I have to do it. They're learning from it. They're getting like a good role model from it. And I've received nothing but support, really. But I know plenty of women who do feel the guilt for it. But I don't really know where that comes from. I feel like that's what you're told you're supposed to feel by, you know, the media or society or whatever. But actually, in day-to-day interaction, I've never received that.
It's a good point. I don't think anyone has ever made me feel guilty, but just yesterday I was texting my friend Karen. She messaged me. She said, "Can I have Lewis for one of the last days of the summer holidays?" And I messaged her back and I said, "Yeah, funnily enough, I've booked those days off as guilt days with my child." And she was like, "What do you mean guilt days?" And I was like, "Well, I work all summer holidays, so I always take the last couple of days of the holidays off to spend some time with him." And even then I was like, "Why?" She was like, "Why do you feel guilty about that?" I'm like, well, because you're off all holidays, because she works at a school, so she gets all the holidays off. And she said to me, she was like, "Don't be fucking stupid." But again, yeah, nobody said that to me. I've put that guilt on myself. It's crackers. So have you ever, Joe first, have you ever, I mean, you've already said you have, but can you think of an example where a woman in a workplace setting put you down for something you did?
Or not done? Yes. Yes. Yeah, I was chewed out about something that I hadn't actually done. It was a barefaced lie. But I recognize in hindsight that it was to try and put me in my place. But by that point, I'd recognized that. So I did something about it.
Yeah. Do you think that spurred you on slightly more in a sort of perverse way rather than did put you down?
Yeah, it did by then, because I'd learned from, you know, I'd learned from experiences growing up, really. And by that point, when I was really aware of it, was when I was coming through with it, and I wasn't going to stand for it, and I wasn't going to stand for it for any other woman on my team either. By that point, I was like, go big or go home by that point. So I was like, I'm done being put down.
Yeah.
I recognize what's happening. I recognize why you're doing it, and I'm not standing for it.
So one of my examples was actually only happened a couple of years ago, and it was, funnily enough, it was in the Seroptimists, which, ding ding mention for the Seroptimists, but it's a women's organization. We are there now. I was asked, because I do SEO for my job, I help people write SEO optimized blogs. They asked me, how do we make our blogs reach out a bigger audience? So I put a content calendar in place, and I had a meeting with the woman who has done the content calendar for the last few years. Now, she is very, very high powered. She's a very successful woman. She has a seat at the UN. She writes international policy. She's the director of program action for the organization. So, she's got a lot of notches on her belt. But she essentially said to me, sit down. You don't know anything about this, and stay in your lane. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay, so that's a challenge then. But I was really surprised. When I thought about it afterwards, I was like, do you know what? Actually, that's happened a few times, but a bit like you, Joe, I hadn't necessarily recognized it for what it was. But by that point, I had, and it was the nudge I needed to circumnavigate and say, all right, if you're going to block me, how do I get around you and do it anyway? What's your example, Hannah?
I can't think of a very specific one. I remember a woman shouting at me, a colleague shouting at me when I was quite a bit younger. But I wasn't very young, I'd already I was 26 or like 27. So I'd been in the workplace a few years. I'd had Naya by this point. I was fairly self-assured. And she called me cocky. And I think, I know. And I think, I do come across as cocky often, but it's not, well, I suppose it is cockiness. I think I'm just.
But it's not, is it? This is the thing. It's assertiveness. And again, why do we accept it in men? Why will we say, oh yeah, they're just being, not the word, what's the word where somebody wants to go for something and think they deserve it?
Ambitious,
that's it. Yeah, they're being ambitious. They've got a plan and they're going for it. Why do we accept that from men and we say in women, because apparently, so 70% of women have reported feeling bullied in the workplace from a female co-worker, and women are 14 to 21% more likely to report female work colleagues for being uncivil or assertive, or what's the word? Jesus, I'm no good with words today.
I don't know.
Aggressive. That's it. Yeah. Aggressive, uncivil, or assertive. So 20% more women are likely. Women are 20% more likely than men to report their female co-workers for being assertive and aggressive. Why? Why do we not accept it?
I mean, my beautiful, wonderful, and intelligent friend Liz, she is very assertive. She's incredibly committed to a job. She's really, really skilled at it, highly qualified, really good at it. And she gets called, aggressive and cocky all the time at work because she's just assertive. She sees something that she needs to do and she goes and does it. She doesn't pussyfoot around. And she, sees something that will benefit her students and she goes and sorts it. She doesn't kind of ask for permission off people. And I've worked in that department with her. Women don't like it because she's, peas above sticks. She's too big for her boots. And I don't know why. I don't know why it's not tolerated. I think there's this kind of feeling that maybe because women have traditionally had to fight so hard for everything that they've got, it feels like equality is not 1 + 1, it's 1 - 1. If I get something, you're going to lose something, and therefore it doesn't benefit any of us. So I'm going to hang on to this kind of well fought for little bit of ground, maybe.
I think a lot of